Life has a way of turning tables when you least expect it. One moment, you think you've moved on from your past, and the next, it comes knocking at your door in the most unexpected way. Imagine being a billionaire, living a life of luxury, power, and success, when suddenly, a simple text message from your ex-wife changes everything. A message so desperate, so heartbreaking, that it forces you to confront a past you thought you had left behind. But what if that message wasn't even meant for you? What if it was a mistake? And what if your response changed someone's life forever? Hello guys, welcome to Stories of Hope. Today, I am really excited to share a powerful story with you. One that is filled with emotions, regret, and an unexpected twist that will leave you thinking. Before we start, tell me, where are you watching this from? Let me know the name of your country or city in the comments. Now, let's begin this incredible story. Michael Carter was the kind of man people admired. A billionaire CEO, the face of one of the biggest tech companies in the country, and a man who had everything: money, power, and influence. But what most people didn't know was that behind his success was a painful past, one he had buried deep. He had been married once, to Emma. She was his college sweetheart, the woman he once believed he would spend the rest of his life with. But things didn't go as planned. Their marriage ended 5 years ago, after endless fights, misunderstandings, and one final blow that neither of them could recover from. Michael moved on, or at least that's what he told himself. He focused on his company, built an empire, and never looked back. He never reached out to Emma, and she never contacted him. They became strangers, just two people who had once shared a life. But one night, as Michael sat alone in his penthouse, scrolling through his phone, an unexpected message popped up. Emma. I hate to ask this, but I need help. I don't have enough money for baby formula, and my son hasn't eaten all day. I'll pay you back as soon as I can. Michael stared at the message, his hands frozen. His heart pounded in his chest. His son? She had a child? His mind raced. Was this message even meant for him? Was she texting the wrong person? And why was she struggling? Emma was always independent, always proud. She would never ask for help unless she had no other choice. He could have ignored the message. He could have assumed it was a mistake, but something inside him wouldn't let him. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then, without thinking, he typed his response. Where are you? There was a long silence after Michael sent the message. He stared at his phone, his mind filled with questions. Why was Emma asking for money? Who was this child she was talking about, and why did she sound so desperate? Minutes passed, and then 3 little dots appeared on the screen. She was typing. Emma. Michael, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to text you. It was a mistake. A mistake. Michael exhaled, leaning back in his chair. He could have just let it go. He could have closed the conversation and gone back to his work. But something about her words unsettled him. This wasn't just a casual mistake. This was desperation. He didn't delete the message. Instead, he replied, Emma, just tell me. Do you need help? For a while, she didn't respond. And then, finally, Emma. It's nothing. Forget I asked. Michael clenched his jaw. He knew Emma well enough to understand that if she was saying forget it, it meant she was struggling but was too proud to admit it. His fingers tightened around his phone. He wanted to walk away. He had spent years convincing himself that their past didn't matter, that she didn't matter. But here he was, staring at a screen, unable to ignore the reality of what was happening. With a deep breath, he stood up, grabbed his car keys, and walked out of his penthouse. He had to see her. The drive to Emma's neighborhood was a sharp contrast from the life Michael had built. The bright city lights and luxury buildings faded away as he entered a small, run-down area on the outskirts of town. The houses were old, the streets quiet, and the only sound was the distant hum of cars passing by. Michael parked his sleek black car in front of a modest apartment complex. It was nothing like the high-rise buildings he was used to. This place, it was struggling. He checked the message again. The address Emma had once shared with him during their marriage was still the same. That meant she had been living here all this time, while he was out building an empire. A strange feeling settled in his chest. Walking up to the door, he hesitated for a moment before knocking. There was silence. Then, after a few seconds, the door opened slightly, revealing Emma. She looked different, tired, weary. Her once vibrant eyes were now dim, and her clothes, though clean, were worn out. Michael's heart clenched. This wasn't the Emma he remembered, the strong, fearless woman who once challenged him at every step. She blinked in shock. "Michael?" He took a deep breath. "I got your message." Emma swallowed, her hands gripping the doorframe. "I told you it was a mistake." Michael's gaze softened as he looked past her, into the small apartment. That's when he saw it, a crib in the corner of the room. His chest tightened. "Emma, whose baby is that?" She hesitated, her lips trembling before whispering, "He's mine." Michael's breath hitched. A wave of emotions crashed over him. He had spent 5 years believing their chapter was over. But now, standing at her doorstep, staring at the crib, he realized something. Maybe their story wasn't finished yet. For a moment, Michael couldn't speak. His eyes remained fixed on the crib, his mind struggling to process Emma's words. She had a child. His voice came out quieter than he intended. "Emma, is he mine?" Emma's expression tensed. Her fingers tightened on the doorframe as if bracing for impact. "No," she said finally. "He's not yours." Michael felt something shift inside him, something he couldn't quite explain, a mix of relief, confusion, and something else. "Then why did you text me?" His tone wasn't harsh, just firm. He needed to understand. Emma let out a soft, tired sigh. "I told you, it was a mistake." Michael studied her carefully. She looked exhausted, like someone who had been carrying a weight for far too long. Her eyes were filled with pride, but beneath it, there was something else, something fragile. He could have left, could have walked away and convinced himself that this had nothing to do with him. But he didn't. Instead, he took a step forward. "Emma, do you really want me to leave?" She exhaled shakily. "Michael, this isn't your problem." "But it is, isn't it?" His voice was calm, steady. "You wouldn't have sent that message if things were fine." Emma pressed her lips together. Then, after a long silence, she stepped aside, opening the door. Michael hesitated for only a second before walking in. The apartment was small, much smaller than he expected. The furniture was old, but everything was neatly arranged. The faint scent of baby powder filled the air. His eyes landed on the crib again. Inside, a small baby lay peacefully asleep, his tiny fists curled near his chest. Michael had never been the type to get emotional, but something about the scene in front of him made his chest tighten. Emma walked past him, sitting down on a worn-out couch. She ran a hand through her hair, looking drained. Michael took a seat across from her. "Tell me the truth, Emma. What's going on?" She hesitated, her fingers fidgeting in her lap. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke. "I lost my job a few months ago," she admitted. "I was managing, but then Liam..." She glanced at the sleeping baby, her face softening. "He got sick. Hospital bills, medicine. It all piled up. I used up everything I had." Michael listened silently, his jaw tightening. She took a deep breath. "I was desperate, Michael. I was trying to text someone else, but somehow I sent it to you instead." She let out a bitter laugh. "Maybe it was fate's cruel joke." Michael leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His mind was racing. Emma had always been independent. She never asked for help, not even when they were together. For her to be in a situation where she had no choice but to reach out, that meant things were really bad. Michael's next words surprised even himself. "I want to help." Emma's head snapped up. "No!" Michael raised an eyebrow. "No? I don't need your charity, Michael." Her voice was sharp, defensive. "I made my choices. I'll figure it out." Michael exhaled, shaking his head. "Emma, this isn't about choices. It's about survival." He gestured toward the crib. "That's a baby who needs formula, medicine, a stable home. This isn't the time for pride." Emma looked away, her lips trembling. Michael sighed. "Let me help, not because you need it, but because he does." Emma's eyes filled with tears. For a moment she looked like she wanted to argue, but then her shoulders sagged and she let out a shaky breath. "What are you offering?" she whispered. Michael leaned back, his gaze steady. "Whatever you need." Emma swallowed hard. "And what do you want in return?" Michael's answer was simple. "Nothing." Emma stared at him, disbelief flickering in her eyes. Michael meant it. He didn't know why, but in that moment he knew he wasn't walking away. Emma wiped her eyes quickly, as if embarrassed by her own emotions. She had always been strong, always carried herself like she didn't need anyone. But now, sitting in this small apartment, facing the man she once loved, her walls were crumbling. Michael could see it. He wasn't here to humiliate her, and he definitely wasn't here to gloat. He just wanted to understand, and to help. Emma took a deep breath, as if gathering her strength. "Michael, I don't even know what help looks like right now." Michael glanced around the apartment, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. The broken heater in the corner, the nearly empty fridge, the unopened stack of bills on the counter. "Let's start with the basics," he said firmly. "What do you need right now?" Emma hesitated. "Formula, diapers." Her voice was small, reluctant. "And rent. I'm behind 2 months." Michael pulled out his phone. "Consider it done." Emma's head shot up. "Michael," he held up a hand. "I'm not asking for permission, Emma. I'm doing this." Emma clenched her jaw. "You can't just throw money at this and expect..." "Expect what?" Michael's voice was calm, but firm. "That I'll fix everything? I know I can't, but I can help, and you're not in a position to refuse that right now." Emma opened her mouth to argue, but stopped herself. She looked exhausted, mentally and physically. Michael typed something on his phone and then looked up. "Your rent is covered. There's a grocery delivery on the way, and I transferred some money to your account for anything else you need." Emma let out a shaky breath, her hands gripping the couch. She looked overwhelmed, as if the weight she had been carrying for months had suddenly been lifted. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Michael studied her for a long moment. Why was he doing this? He had spent years convincing himself that his past with Emma was behind him, that she had made her choices, and he had made his. But now, sitting in front of her, seeing how much she had struggled, something inside him wouldn't let him walk away. "You were the first person who ever believed in me, Emma," he said finally. "Back when I had nothing. Back when I was just some broke kid with big dreams." Emma's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected that answer. Michael leaned forward. "I never forgot that, and I won't let you go through this alone." Tears welled in Emma's eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. She didn't want to cry in front of him. She swallowed hard. "I don't know how to thank you." Michael shook his head. "You don't have to." A small sound interrupted them. They both turned toward the crib, where the baby stirred, his tiny fingers curling as he let out a soft whimper. Emma immediately stood and walked over, gently picking him up. She cradled him in her arms, rocking him softly. Michael watched, something unfamiliar tugging at his chest. "What's his name?" he asked quietly. Emma looked down at the baby, a soft smile on her lips. Liam, Michael nodded. Liam. He let the name settle in his mind. For some reason, it felt important. He stood up, adjusting his suit jacket. I'll check in tomorrow. If you need anything before then, just text me. Emma looked up at him, something unreadable in her expression. Okay, she said softly. Michael turned to leave, but before he reached the door, he heard her voice again. Michael? He glanced back. Emma hesitated. Then, in barely more than a whisper, she said, Thank you. Michael held her gaze for a moment. Then, he gave a small nod, and without another word, he walked out the door. Michael walked out of Emma's apartment, but something inside him felt unsettled. He had come here thinking he would send some money and move on. But it wasn't that simple. As he sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel, his mind raced. He had spent years building his empire, growing his company into something untouchable. Yet, for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had missed something important. He had missed her struggles. He had missed his son. The realization hit him hard. Liam was his child. He hadn't even needed to ask. The timelines made sense, and the way Emma looked at the baby, so protectively, so fiercely, he knew she had been shielding him from a truth that was too painful to share. Michael didn't drive away. Instead, he turned off the engine, got out, and walked back toward the apartment. Emma, still holding Liam, looked surprised when she opened the door. You forget something? She asked. Michael took a deep breath. No more distance. No more pretending. I need to know the truth, he said, his voice calm but firm. Emma froze. Her grip on Liam tightened. Michael, this isn't… Is he mine? Silence filled the room. Emma's eyes filled with something between fear and sadness. Yes. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Michael felt his whole world tilt. He had been prepared for it, yet hearing it changed everything. For how long? He asked, his voice steady. Emma sighed, shifting Liam in her arms. Since the day I found out, I knew I wouldn't ask you for anything. You were busy building your company. We were already over, and I didn't want you to feel trapped. Michael clenched his jaw. You thought I wouldn't want to be part of his life? Emma swallowed hard. I thought you had moved on, that maybe it was better if you didn't know. Michael exhaled sharply. His entire life had been built around control, of his business, his finances, his future. But this was something he had no control over. He looked at Liam, at his tiny hands and peaceful face. This little boy, his son, had been struggling alongside his mother, while he had been living in luxury, completely unaware. I want to be in his life, Michael said firmly. Not just as someone who sends money. I want to be his father. Emma's lips parted slightly, surprise flickering across her face. Michael, I don't want you to feel obligated. This isn't an obligation. His voice was strong, unwavering. This is my responsibility, and more than that, it's my choice. A tear slipped down Emma's cheek. She quickly wiped it away, nodding slowly. Michael took a step closer, lowering his voice. Let me help, Emma, not just today, not just financially. Let me be there for both of you. Emma looked down at Liam, who was now sleeping in her arms. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel so alone. Okay, she whispered. Michael felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. This was the beginning of something real. A new kind of success. One that had nothing to do with wealth, but everything to do with family. He pulled out his phone once more. I'll set up a place for both of you. A safe, comfortable home. You won't have to worry about money again. Emma opened her mouth to protest, but Michael shook his head. No arguments. You've carried this burden alone for too long. Let me carry it with you now. A small, emotional smile broke through Emma's tired face. "Thank you," she whispered. Michael looked at his son one last time before stepping toward the door. This wasn't just about fixing things. This was about never letting them break again. Before leaving, he turned back to Emma, his expression soft but certain. "This isn't just for today. I'll be here, always." And for the first time in years, Emma believed him. Did this story touch your heart? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more real-life emotional stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for stories of hope.